hopefully there's a historical beginning of worldwide soterias blossoming.
And peer respites.
Yes,
Yeah.
and peer respite.
So this is the May 9th. Yeah, I don't think anybody in the world is on a different day, though we are on different times. May 9th, 2021, the first, among the first planning meetings, but the first of the Peer Respite Soteria Summit planning group. And I'm just going to give everybody kind of I have just been thinking and talking to people and kind of formulating things, but anything that I've been thinking is all open. Nothing's written in stone, though we do have to have it written in stone soon so that we could start publicizing it. But we have like a good month to play with things, and then a month to really formalize things, and then we'll start with the publicity. That's the time frame. I'm very excited and nervous. I'm noticing my whole being is kind of going, this is really exciting. So, yeah, thank you. Whew. So for about 3 years, I've been saying, Rethinking Psychiatry started with these amazing
Symposium.
Thank you. Cindi and I do this back and forth. We each get to that word and the other one has to fill it in. These amazing symposia and with workshops and lots going on. And I thought, we should be doing that again. And then I've been secretly fantasizing that we could get Voice Hendrix to talk. I thought he would be an amazing keynote speaker. And then when COVID hit and we all went online and I was like, oh, we can have anybody talk now. We don't have to have them be local. And so I reached out, I sleuthed out Voice Hendrix. Thank you, Yana. And he was very happy to talk. And he gave an amazing, really, if you haven't listened to it yet, I really do recommend it, on our Rethinking Psychiatry YouTube channel. And then Rachel had the idea, well, why don't we get Soteria Vermont? And I'm just repeating some of this because we're recording and because also I'm nervous. And then kind of the Soteria Summit series was born. And then it kind of folded lovely. I've been saying Peer Respite Soteria Summer Summit. It has such a lovely ring to it. I've dropped the summer part though, in hopes that, whoops, where'd you all go? In hopes that, hi Julie, welcome. In hopes that we'll have people from the Southern Hemisphere. So I don't want to do the global North imposing on the global South thing by assuming summer, but in my heart, it has that ring to it. And my hope is that it'll be inspiring. This summit will be inspiring people to have the tools and the inspiration and the network and support to bring these to our communities. So because we started getting international connection, and by international, so far we have folks from the UK. You want to wave, folks from UK? And the folks from Germany who've reached out to us aren't here today. Hopefully they'll be here one of the other days. And the folks from Israel, who have, by the way, 10 Soteria houses at this point and are online to have 130 within 2 years, like the size of New Jersey. So yeah, pretty inspiring. So because the time frame, and people from Alaska, hello Susan, and hopefully other people, the time frame goes from an hour for me. So starting at 9 a.m. this morning to, if people from Israel were here, it would be 8 p.m. there. Yeah, so 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So the slice of time that works for everybody in there is about 9 a.m. till 9 a.m. for, this is so hard to talk about this. But anyway, my time, I'm just going to say my time, 9 a.m. till noon. So that would be like 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., painful on a Sunday morning, but doable for something as valuable and exciting as this. And 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. in Israel. So because we have that little window of time, it seemed like we can't do a whole day, let alone 2 or 3 days in a row. But Sundays seems to work for people. And so in my mind, I was thinking, what if we did Sundays in August? And then it turns out there were 5 of them. And so my idea started being, well, what if we had kind of keynotes on the first Sunday, August 1st, maybe one from Soteria, one from Peer Respite, and then a lot of question and answer time. And then the 4 remaining could be workshops, and we would have to decide that there was some, when I floated this in our Rethinking Core group, people were like, not more than one option, just have one option per time slot, but that would maybe only give up to 4 workshops. If we did 2 and we recorded them all, we could have up to 8. But it'll remain to be seen how you all feel about that, how we all feel about that. And of course, if people only needed short time periods for workshops, we could split the time. We could also have panels. I was imagining we could do panels of, I'll just give a smattering of some thoughts, and then part of what I hope we could brainstorm together is content, so possible workshops, but like things like get all the Soteria people together and have them ask questions of each other and voice. Maybe kind of things about how to cite one and what makes a good house for a respite or a Soteria, things about funding. How do you fund the thing? That's the $1 million literally question. Things about maybe there could be a panel on, from the experienced people who are already doing it or had done it, what I wished I had known in the beginning that I know now. And certainly there hopefully would be panels of or workshops of questions that people bring. Hopefully there'll be new people who haven't done this yet, who are like, how do we start? And they could suggest workshops. So lots of possibilities. That's my thought so far. Let's see. I might just take a breath. I have more to tell, but how does that all sound so far? Maybe we could just take some time to talk about. Like
Grace, I didn't hear, I may have missed it, but we also talked about having actual former residents from Soteria and also Sophia and other respites, like having a panel.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
I was just trying to give a smattering, and hopefully we'll get lots more in a brains that hopefully that'll be part of what we'll do together is we'll brainstorm different possibilities.
Can I just check?
Thank you.
Can I just check, Grace? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Just checking. I might have misheard it. Are we thinking, and we might not know yet, but is this an idea where we could invite other people who are interested in Soteria or know about a lot about it, but haven't been involved in anything Soteria-ish yet?
Yes.
Great.
Absolutely, yes.
Because in the UK, we've got lots of people really interested now who want to know more about it. And this could be a thing to gather people together so we could get further on with opening our houses here. That's our plan. Yeah.
That's
It
the
could be
hope.
like a starting point for something big, couldn't it?
That's the hope. And whether you want to invite some of them, if some of them have a lot of energy and want to come to planning meetings, because we need newbies who will ask the questions that if we've been thinking about it for a while, we won't think of, but certainly the summit.
Yeah, great.
And hello, voice.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good.
So I was thinking what Jen, you just brought up was really kind of who our audience is. Like, how do we expand the, people who are interested in these types of alternatives to our more conventional system? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, or people who are both people who are specifically interested in Soteria houses and similar ways of working. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, soterias and Peer Respites. Yes, and there may be others, other formats.
Yeah, just to say, Peer Respite isn't a term I've heard used in the UK, but I can guess what it is. But we might have other things, but we call them something else.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I think when we're using terms, we might need to check out that other people know what we mean. Yeah.
Good point. Cindi, would you give a little bit on Peer Respite? That's kind of your jam.
Well, I would be glad to, but I think that's Yana's expertise, and she wrote a grant and actually was part of the second story. Yana, you want to define that one?
Sure, just real briefly. Being that I couldn't start a Soteria in my own town for lots of reasons, I had an innovative grant opportunity with SAMHSA, which is our federal government's wing of doing things for mental health sometimes, and they were doing a transformation grant. And so a Peer Respite here, we had the first one. This was the first one I started in California, but it's the idea is that you have a place to go instead of the hospital as an alternative, where you can have a break from your living situation if you need to get out of a situation and just be with people that you can talk to and you can be with. And it should be run and staffed fully by all people with lived experience. So the idea being that, Ben, if you know what it's like, you are going to have more compassion, more understanding, and basically be able to be with people. And the be with is the key word, because that was what we did at Soteria. So there's a connection between the Soterias and the Peer Respites, because the philosophy of being with crosses both platforms, if you will, of types of offerings. Here in California, Peer Respites are not used as instead of a Soteria. I wish I could say they were, but they're not. They really, to my knowledge, and I'd be curious if Althea House with Sarah Davido is doing it differently now. She wasn't then, but they weren't able to have people who were literally meeting the so-called criteria to go to a locked acute psychiatric hospital. If people were, Soteria people had to come voluntarily and make a choice, even though they were being locked up technically on a 72-hour hold. They could choose to come to Soteria. But when we tried to have people who were really in a very acute and challenging state, what I saw happening was that it was challenging and triggering the staff. And that, my guess is that was a training issue, that people weren't prepared for that. And so if you were going to meld the two and have it be all in one, you'd have to really choose people who were volunteering to work with that level of distress and psychosis, if you will. And the people that came to the original Peer Respite that I started, that wasn't the training. They were trained in intentional peer support with Sherry Mead and Chris Hansen. But the emphasis was, if any of you know IPS, is more on a mutuality worldview, shared worldview. And if someone can't participate mutually and share your worldview, you're going to have a big disconnect. Anyhow, that's me sort of rambling. You're shaking your head, Berta. What are you saying, thinking over there?
Well, I don't think, I was thinking that you can use intentional peer support, which respects different worldviews. It doesn't expect you to have the same. But
Right.
peer respite that I'm aware of has had a time limitation.
Mhm.
So it's usually,
I can't hear you.
so what you can do mutually in a week is kind of different than being with someone through a journey that is more open-ended.
No, that's a really good point. I failed to mention that Berta, you're exactly right. The peer respites that we have are temporary. Ours is 2 weeks here in Santa Cruz, California. Some are shorter stays. But you're absolutely right. If you're going to be with somebody and go through that journey, you really need, I mean, at minimum, Voice can pipe in on the data for Soteria, but at minimum 6 weeks before things start to kind of calm down and you can start integrating your experience. And then you really need longer because you want to have some time to integrate what you've just been going through and how you're going to go back out into your whatever living situation you need to return to. And the peer respites are pretty short periods for that. But the point, I've seen them be incredibly helpful really to offset a full crisis in someone's life. If they can come to a respite house when they're having trouble sleeping or they're fighting with a roommate or a family member or a loved one and get a break and pull back in and be with people, they often can avoid having a full crisis in their life, which for a lot of people, they've said, you know, I avoided the hospital because I was able to go in a preventative way. And as you know, a lot of hospitals, there's no prevention and they wait until you're super acute. And by then, often your whole life is unraveled. You've lost your job, you've lost your housing. And so the idea is to allow people to make these choices to, you know, ask for help and be in a place where it's safe before they have to lose everything and start over.
There's
So I haven't run a
wonderful-
peer respite, but I've visited quite a few. And what I'm finding is that there's a great deal of variability in how they're run.
Absolutely.
And so there's not like it's not like there's a respite model in a sense. Like Soteria got pretty well defined thanks to you guys doing, you know, the research and you know, kind of, and writing it down and writing a book. But one of the and I was hoping he'd get on today, but Steve Michio out of New York was one of the first, if not the first, peer respite that I'm aware of. And they have expanded so much that they have a house that people can come to, but sometimes people don't want to go to a congregate living. And there's a fair amount of controversy about that now because of, you know, COVID is making us rethink all of this, right? So, but before COVID, they actually had a cadre of peer supporters who would go as part of a respite, go to somebody's house or apartment and stay with them, like if they didn't want to come to the house. And so that's why I mean there's a great deal of variability, but I think the concept is found to be effective in, you know, keeping people from, you know, that cycle of hospitalization. And
Yeah.
one that I visited in New York also had they actually had a warm line and they made calls to people to check on them and stuff like that. So there's a great deal of variability is all I'm saying. And yeah, Sarah is kind of the upcoming expert on this stuff as well. So
two equivalents, well, might be similar, that I think exist in the UK is one that we call Soteria at Home, where people have support from people who know how to be with people, or can't know how to be with, you can't be sure you know how to be with everybody, but people who are familiar with being with people who are struggling, and they might support the person, the family, and where the family gets some respite as well. So there's that, and it can be different depending on the situation, how it works. But also, I've just come across a group of people in the northeast of the UK who have this thing that they call, I think the term is under the radar soteria or undercover soteria, where groups of people who've bonded because they've been through similar things, who've got a spare room. And when somebody's feeling a bit rocky and thinking things might be unraveling, they support each other in turn, kind of thing. And I had a Zoom call with someone recently, and who's doing that, and she saw that as something that could go alongside a soteria house and be like a sort of undercover outreach, or it might be over the radar eventually. But they decided they want to do it undercover because if people got to hear about it, they might go risk, 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 risk. You know how this alarm bell goes risk. Does that happen in the US and elsewhere? Yeah. And they've said they've that way kept a bunch of people away from hospital. So that's something else that sounds like peer support, but a more informal version. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. That's beautiful. Reminds me of the Underground Railroad. I just wanted to say that for those who aren't very familiar with it, AFIA, which is under the Western Mass Recovery Learning Center, they have AFIA spelled AFYA, and they actually have a beautiful short 20-minute video that features former residents, if you will, because I think they have a week to 2 weeks, telling about it. And then the United States also has a website called peerrespite.net, and there's a manual on there that talks about the different kinds of respite. Some are peer run, some are run by agencies that have a whole different field than ones that are peer controlled, and there's a hybrids in between. So that's a great video.
I think one of the in Soteria, my understanding is it's being staffed by people who have characteristics that make them open to walking alongside and accompanying someone in whatever extreme they are experiencing. And peer respite has been, it's true what Cindi says is, there's hybrid, there's a range. But I think the important characteristic besides that ability to walk beside is the lived experience. So, when Soteria describes the kind of staff that they looked for, and voice can really, give us that in detail, those characteristics of those folks didn't necessarily mean lived experience of an extreme experience. It meant that they were open to not trying to intrude and manage, and that they could be a support or a guide, an accompanier. And I think peer respite, that really, I do think that the person who most contributed was Sherry Mead, and then Sherry and Chris Hansen. And then Sarah Davidoff wrote that manual, but it was pulling together the work that had been done for decades, but not replicated a whole lot. And I think that having more things of opportunities available that have the value base that's human experience is what I would love to see.
I know in the
Would it be
peer
helpful
respite.
for me to sort of,
Go ahead. Is that you, voice?
Would it be helpful to sort of give you my opinion of what Soteria staff, who the Soteria staff were and what we're looking for? Collier, it probably, I'm not sure. I think from what I'm hearing, we're talking about a very complex situation here, because Soteria was defined in a very narrow way. So a lot of times language can be confusing. But the issue of peer, so it didn't exist during the Soteria period. The language is different. And so there wasn't a focus on working with peers who was going to be involved as staff at Soteria. It had more to do with characteristic of an individual. And that's a kind of a broad area, and it's hard, kind of hard to define. And the other important piece is that the community of Soteria had input in who was hired. So it had to do with compatibility between the community and that person being hired. So it is a little more complex.
So I want to kind of bring the conversation back to thinking about this all in terms of how to create a summit, a gathering, where people will be coming, hopefully people who have no idea about these two options. All they know is the medical model. And these are some of the questions that people are going to have and not even know that they have, not even know enough to know that they have yet. And so, Helen, it looks like you're wanting to say something.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but yeah, I was just wondering if the purpose of the event would be to network amongst Soteria people in different countries, or whether it's to try and get the message out more broadly. Because I was wondering, I was kind of thinking maybe it'd be more the former, in that we could learn from each other, and then we could go back to our own countries and talk about different Soterias in other places. Because I think one of the things we come up against a lot, because the UK, we haven't really had a proper Soteria house, if you like. We've had sort of little mini things. We haven't, and funders often go, well, you know, it's never been tried before. And if we can sort of point to loads of other countries and stuff like that, then it really helps. So I was kind of thinking in relation to a summit, whether we should, I suppose my view might be that it might be better to concentrate not on convincing others, but on informing ourselves, if you like. I don't know.
I would agree, Helen, not just informing each other, but finding ways of supporting each other to carry on doing what's sometimes considered controversial or unworkable stuff.
So I think that's a fabulous point, and in my idea that gets folded in, but that there's space. I'm hoping like there could be a workshop where people come together and talk to each other, and kind of in a fishbowl, that the workshop participants are listening to these people who have done it and are doing it and want, you know, like who are learning from each other. And but I also haven't, but my hope is that we do bring, like, perhaps there are legislative people, you know, in our country, state legislative people who have some control over big budgets, and, you know, who knows who, but maybe they could come to this and get a feeling how alive this movement is, and how it's been done, and as well as the grassroots up, like getting people who want to bring this together. But my hope is that also that Susan said this thing. She was like, at one of our conversations, Grace, calm down. She's so good at that. You know, you don't have to get everything in at once. This is just the first annual. And I went, oh, that has a lovely ring to it. So we started incorporating that. And then my hope was that we could maybe even have a way that people could network in between the annual summits and be able to be plugged in and have conversations with the networks that they have created in the summits and get support, like, oh, I'm up against this, who has ideas for me on that, or who knows about this or that. How does that?
Grace, let me say something here. I'm Al. I live in Doñana County, New Mexico, and I'm working on bringing a Soteria house to Doñana County. So as I understand, your vision is that there would be 4 or 5 of these meetings in August. And my thought is that, we could start with a more broad sort of approach, helping people understand what Soteria is, what peer-run respite is, but that at some point we become pretty practical about it and start giving people some real help in how do you go about bringing a Soteria house to your community? What does it take? How do you get funded? What kind of people staff it? And how do you build support for it? How do you, I think this is an important question. What kind of language do you use to help people understand it? We have a real opportunity here because people generally know that the way we treat people who are experiencing what we call psychosis doesn't work. It doesn't work in this country. Even NAMI people know that. So there's a real opportunity here to make a difference. And my vision is that there's a Soteria house in every community in this country of 50,000 or more. And this is where the vision is. This is where we have to see ourselves going. So I do hope that at some point it becomes quite practical and helping people really do this, not just talk about it, but do it.
I agree, Al. And I actually feel so inspired knowing that Israel is, it seems like practically overnight, they've gone from 1 to 10, is it, or 12? And I feel like that should be who we're listening to and learning. Like, I know we're set up differently in terms of insurance and all that, but I've read the stories that, Whitaker put on Mad in America about it, that it would, I think, there are so many people who want to start a Soteria that I'm kind of with you, like, let's get moving on how are people being successful? And Israel seems to have suddenly taken the limelight and they're doing it. I want to go to Israel and visit now. So
Yeah.
I personally feel like we should just have the whole thing focused on details on what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Grace?
Just ditto, I agree. I'm really interested in helping people figure out the practicalities and opening is one thing, sustaining is another. I think some of us know that as well. So I like what you said, Al. We start a little broad for the kind of the new people new to the idea, but I agree with you, Yana, let's get practical too. Help people figure out how to do it.
Cindi and then Avrami, maybe.
So I'm thinking maybe we just go around very quickly and let each person just in a few sentences share what their vision is to see if we've got overlapping ones, new ones. So everyone go around very quickly that hasn't shared yet what their vision is for the summit. Why did you come here? What are you hoping for?
So yes, after Avrami, that's perfect.
I want to say about, again, sorry about my English, that Soteria, it's not only a house. Soteria, it's a spirit. And in Israel, we talked about the spirit of Soteria and that you don't need only to build houses. It can be in your private clinic, it can be in your family, it can be with your neighbors. And we started, and what's a big move in Israel was when in hospitals that today I'm working there, I don't know if you heard about him, Professor Mark Weiser, he is a big expert of schizophrenia. He tied somebody to a bed for a lot of time. It was like, I don't know, 100 days, more than 100 days. And it got to the radio. And one one of the, I don't know how we say the word, the people in the radio, she talked every day in the radio. She said, another day, this person is tied. And it did big voice in all the country, how not everybody is thinking about a psychiatric hospital. It's not important for everybody, not all the politics talking about it. But in the radio in Israel in 2016, every day was one in the radio that talked about what happening in the Tel HaShomer hospital, and it made a lot of noise. And because of that noise, we had the opportunity to open the first house. But what we talked in Israel, it wasn't against the biological model or things like that. It was not against, was the opposite of against.
For.
What?
For.
To be for?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, maybe. So we wanted to say that we need to bring more the psychosocial elements. And that's what we're fighting in Israel, the human treatment, the psychosocial elements, and not to be against the biological model. Because when people starting to talk against the biological model, everybody is against you. And then the HMO against you, and then so that's how we did it in Israel. And I can tell you that today, Professor Mark Weiser, that because of him, we started the first Soteria, because he was the bad guy. He is now publishing with me the first article about Soteria, and he's saying that this is the best model, and now I had a meeting with him and with two people from the Knesset government. We have today two from our 120 in the government, I don't know the word, that they are very strong on the mental health issue, because they have a private issue on their family, and they came to the hospital, and Professor Mark Weiser told them that they need to push the Soteria model in Israel.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I said, okay, we're in a good situation. Yeah. He's still very biological, but he understands the importance of the psychosocial elements, that we need to bring them more. And I want to say another thing, and then I will finish. He was very angry about what happened in the radio. And in the first, he said, nobody will tell me who to tie and how much to tie. I will do what I think. And a year after, there was a whole year with no tying. So it was amazing how you say that you have to do it. And then 1 year after, nobody was tied in the hospital, and all the country, the numbers of tying people in the hospitals was very, very low. It was amazing. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. And in English yet.
Before we leave, could we get clarification? Because you had said, Avraham, that not every, the Soteria is a philosophy. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a house. And we're running numbers around, floating numbers like you have 10 houses. And last time I spoke with one of your staff, I think his name is Iti, you only had 2, and that was maybe a year ago. So are there actually 10 houses, or are there 10 models, like some being done in people's homes or something different, so that we're more accurate on how we're publicizing?
We have 10 houses that the HMO are paying them.
Okay. But they
yeah.
might be someone's private home that are getting paid?
What?
Are they 10 houses that are like a place where people go, or are they somebody's private home? Like I could open up my home and the HMO would pay me
No,
to
no, it's not,
have
no,
a,
no, 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 no.
No,
It's not a
okay.
private homes. It's
okay, okay,
yeah, it's
okay, great.
companies or things like that.
And you're
Okay,
on track
that's-
for 130 within 2 years, right?
No, no, it won't be 132 years. We hope to, but
I've been telling people that. I thought that you were telling
sorry,
me like
but
that was a
I
plan.
wish we would have in 2 years 130, but I don't know if it's so.
Sorry, everybody.
keep telling them that, Grace, and maybe it will happen.
Yeah.
I'll get on the radio and every day.
We are working on it, but I don't know.
What
All
is
right,
the
I will stop
average
saying that.
number of residencies in the house? Is it like,
What?
what is the average number of beds, rooms, places for people in the house?
It's because of the money problems. So in the 5 years, we started with 7, and now we are 10, 12. That's
house?
10, 12 beds in a house?
in every
In one
house. One house,
Wow.
because it was not profit with less residents, and people so the house cannot stay with low residents.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Let's go to Cindy's idea. I think that's really important. We're on till 11:30. Excuse me. And I'm going to need to leave right at 11:30, though I could pass I could make somebody else the co-host if you want, if anybody wants to stay on after.
Could you just let us know how long that is?
Oh,
Just-
half an
yes.
hour.
Half an hour, sorry. For
Half
me,
an
that's
hour.
another 5 hours to 11 o'clock.
That's what I was wondering, Jen.
Does
Thank
anyone
you.
want to be the co-host, by the way, so that when I cut out at
I need to leave.
11:30,
I need to leave then too. I don't know about anyone else.
does anybody want to be the co-host? Okay, so we're going to end at 11:30 sharp. Usually I'm not such a sharp time person, but after I had a conflict that
Yes.
I couldn't get out of today.
Just before we move on, how do people feel about having each other's email addresses or something? So if we want to carry on conversations.
So
is
what I
that
want to
too
say,
much for
Jen,
people? Yeah.
Jen, what I want to say is that the Google group that I created, that the emails went out through, if you just reply to the Google group, you'll get everybody, even new people joining.
I am of a certain age, shall we say, when I don't really know what a Google group is. So I might need some help with that.
So for anybody who doesn't know, the email address of there should be an email, the email address in what I sent out should be something like Peer Respite Soteria Summit at googlegroup.com. So if you use that email address, it's a regular email address. Like,
But it'll go to everybody.
it'll go to
You don't
everybody.
need to find the cloud in the sky to do it, or whatever it
It
is.
kind of is the cloud in the sky.
Oh,
So-
I
But you
don't
don't have
understand
to
any of
find
it.
it.
But you don't have to, yeah, you don't have to find it. Just use
That's
that
good.
one.
That's good.
And I really do want to emphasize, please use that, because new people might be joining all the time. And that's one of the things I'm hoping for us to get to. So please, let's go around. And like Cindi says, short, because we only have till 11:30. If you say your vision, and maybe how it sounds to you to do the 5 Sundays in August, just in the morning. Or if you have a different vision of it, and just kind of what you're hoping to get out of it, what Cindi said, and I'm just tacking that on. So I know.
And if you don't finish at 11:30, we'll continue next Sunday. If you can, those who can come back, we'll start with that.
And we can also continue through the email, which I am hoping we'll do. We'll also have it'll be a way for us to do some work in between, since we're on a very short time frame. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna go around and just name people according to my screen, if that's okay, so that there's not a big lag time in between people. Is that all right with people?
Go for it.
So David, hello, welcome.
I'm David, and you know, I thought about respite, and they have one in Waterbury, and people stay there after hospitals or whatever, and they let them get Social Security and set them up with houses to live in. They're on homeless, whatever they are, out of jail. The other one was AA had halfway houses for alcoholics or something, or to give them, tests to make sure they're sober and stuff, but that's halfway houses. It's the same, might be run by peer alcoholics. The other one was that to be a peer working, that you have to have some kind of leadership quality and some kind of be a role model. Because I mean, some people don't have a lot of, if somebody, the other thing is about stealing and medication. If they have medication, it's a whole nother story. They have to have, approved for handing out medication and a lot of other things about people stealing and abusing others. And, it's hard to really control it. And, people are, especially out of hospitals, if they're safe and amendable to some kind of treatment, and everybody's on the same page, then it works out good. But if they're a little wild or something, or have acute episodes, it's hard to deal with it. And it's like a lot of these things.
And David, what's your vision for creating the summit? Like, what's your hope, and what's your vision for that?
Hope is that I did tell them in legislative meeting that we set Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, asked them to set funding for respite housing, and it didn't get approved, so that's how it is. But the thing is to get some kind of approval and some kind of funding, and or it's grants or whatever, and to have peers that are really trained to deal with all kinds of people and things, episodes, whatever they call it, personality differences. That's the thing, that if you can't deal with different personalities, it affects your sanity and ability to deal with these things too. So a lot into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How about Cindi? How about you next?
My vision is just that for soterias and respites to populate the country, whatever that looks like. I'm very interested in hearing other folks that'll help create that vision. So I'll stop and go on.
And Susan, you next.
I had a chance to talk, so I'll just briefly, my one comment is that we do a lot of talking among ourselves a lot, and I always feel like we're preaching to the choir. So I kind of agreed with Al's idea of have some sessions that are kind of more education based, so that other people can learn about it. But then there's people who really want to do similar alternatives and some practical how to approach it. And I'm good with the workshop, the way you suggested, with some keynotes and workshops, or you could do a keynote on each of those days and then the second half be a workshop, something like that. But either way, I think it works. So thank you for pulling this together, Grace. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And then Bert, how about you next?
Yes. So I'm a former resident of the original Soteria House, and when Voice was the director, and I just want to help in any way. I'm retired now, and so I have a lot of time. I have a reason to wake up every day, and if that day is to help in any effort to move the Soteria movement, I'm thrilled to find out that Soteria houses are starting to populate around the world. So in whatever way I can help, I'm willing to do that.
Hey, thank you. And Carole, how about you next?
Hi, yeah, I've been involved we've had respite since the 70s where Mental Patients Liberation Front had invested in some money in Naples and people could just go out there and it had no structure or anything. In the end, it didn't work out. But then we had in Ithaca in the 80s, we had the first respite house. And it was really focused on accessibility and alternative complementary things for people to be doing with their lives. And so I really see that we're now at this point we've got good people who understand what respite and Soteria is about, and we also see the things that go wrong with what has been established, what becomes regulation in different places. But I think we also have to bring in the politicians and mainly their staff to understand as they're talking on the national news about, everything is a problem until mental health gets there. So everybody's got this fantasy that mental health comes in on the wings and all the world will be fine. So I think we need to be out there helping people to understand there are different levels of what a person in a psychiatric situation can benefit from and actually do so much better than they ever have with Soteria and with peer respites. So I would like to broaden the agenda of how many workshops we have working with different kinds of people.
Thank you. And you're in New York, yeah?
Syracuse, yeah.
Thank you. And Helen, how about you next? Your vision and kind of the structure, how you see it?
Yeah, I guess I like the idea of having a big, ambitious vision to keep in mind, but I also think it's important to baby steps as well, because I'm going from my experience in the UK, but we've been at this for quite a number of years, and whenever we try and sort of do a bigger event, sometimes it can backfire if we're not. I remember just one example where we tried, there was a commissioner that was really interested in the Soteria House. We went and met, but then we ended up disagreeing, and there was also, and they just kind of walked away. And I kind of feel like for me anyway, I'd like a space where we can talk about some of the more difficult issues in not only setting up a Soteria, but also some of the issues because obviously none of this is easy. And conventional psychiatry is not easy. It's not straightforward, and neither is what we're trying to do. And I guess it'd be really nice to have a space where we could really hear about some of the different ways in which we might, deal with conflict or difference or crisis and stuff like that. And just really, really listen and learn from each other and learn from other settings, because obviously we're not going to be able to reproduce everything in the same way because context is so different. We live in a particular context in the UK, which is very different from, I'm sure, other places. So I guess it's not like a one size fits all. It's like working out what would work in our different places. So I'm a little bit reluctant to kind of invite all the policy people and all the ministers and everything in our place until we're really we know what, I don't know. I'm a little bit cautious, I think, because I've been burnt a lot with stuff, and I wouldn't want to see such a really important initiative kind of backfiring on us. But maybe I'm a little bit too conservative. I don't know.
Thank you.
Important
Considerations. Denise, did you want to say?
Hi, everyone. As I mentioned, I do a couple of voice hearing groups, And for me, at the beginning, it was really, really good. I had like a regular 12 to 14 people that came all the time. And then as of late, it's really come down to just a couple of people coming. And for some of them, it's mainly because they truly want to be together in person. And to the best of my ability, I explained to them I have no control over that. I can't bring us together in person. But thank God for Zoom. I mean, it's amazing. And I think in a lot of ways it's helped because we're not driving to and from, so we're not losing a lot of time. And I'm very flexible, and they know I'm open to any time they need me. They're welcome to call me, and they do. I think it's just that COVID's taken such a number on all of us, you know, and people just, we're doing the best we can do. We're trying to be there to help, to let you know that somebody does care. We are listening, and that I let them know that everything they say stays in the room we're in, nothing leaves the room. And I leave the conversation open to anything that they need to talk about. I don't have any set schedule, just say what you need to say. So my hope is that we keep in touch, and that we keep some of the people who are using the services get involved as well, to give us feedback as to what they feel they might need, so that we could all be helping, because that's what we're all doing here. We want to help. Thank you.
Thank you. And Al.
Yeah, I've already talked this, so I'll just make this brief. I want to piggyback on what Avraham said about the importance of the spirit of Soteria. And I think one of the great benefits of creating Soterias and making Soterias work is that it demonstrates a different way of helping people who are in this psychotic experience, and an understanding that the psychotic experience is a move towards healing. It's a move of a person towards surviving, towards healing. And the best thing we can do is help a person go through it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to help a person. We're going to provide safety, support, and affirmation as a person goes through this experience towards recovery. And that's such a different approach. And I appreciate also what Avraham says is, don't fight biopsychiatry. Don't fight it. Just say, no, this is an approach that works. We want to expand it in the country. It works, and it's actually cost effective. So I think that's important. The whole idea that we're demonstrating a much better way of helping people who have fallen into this state.
Thank you. And then, Bertha, did you go yet? How did I get confused?
I think I've already talked probably more than my share. There's a Julie that I don't think we've heard from.
Why don't we go to Julie next?
Good afternoon. I'm Julie from Connecticut. COVID has provided a lot of opportunities for Zooming for mental health workshops, and most recently I was trained as an HBN facilitator.
What's HBN? Oh, Hearing Voices
Network.
Hearing Voices Network.
And advocacy groups in my state are looking into peer respite, and there's some talk of taking a trip to look at some models that are within driving distance for research. So I'm mostly here to listen and absorb, and I'm very encouraged by what I'm hearing today. Thank you.
Yay, thank you. And Voice, you for your vision about the summit?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to talk about structure that much, but I think there's some really critical issues that we need to be thinking about that need to be exposed and experienced. And is that whole, we exist, Soteria is a threat to the system in some ways. We're a threat to psychiatry, we're a threat to pharma, we're a threat to the medical model. So having had to deal with that through my career, it's going to be important how do we approach it. And I think one of the presenters said that to sort of go around it by sort of not tracking, and that's probably a good idea, because I don't think there's any way we're going to go around, because just the fact that in the study, Soteria, the people in Soteria who were treated in that period they were in the house, only 8% of the people got medication, where the control group in the hospital got 100%. That is a threat to a system. That is a monetary threat that is important. The other part of it that's critical, you're hitting a field of study, psychiatry, that the Soteria model really put holes in many ways. So you look at the Harvard study in the late 90s, where they showed that you were better off being treated for schizophrenia, it wasn't schizophrenia, 100 years ago than you are now. So with all these changes, we're getting worse. And that's a statement about our traditional model. So Soteria really is a threat, as again, a threat to the politician, not the politician, but the industry in itself. The other part of it is going to be really important. How do we design economics in a way that Soteria can exist and be funded? Those kind of things are going to be really critical in terms of long-term process. And trust me, it's critical to make sure to try to run, for instance, Soteria. I've seen Soteria try to run with volunteers. It's powerful, but the stability is not there. And so these kind of things become critical. And so in some ways, we're going to have to sort of hit politicians in a way that sees this effort as being important and help build a structure around it that exists. So in some ways, this process, we need to be aware of this kind of thing and make sure it's there. The other thing that's really interesting that I just dawned on me, Soteria, we created a community, a physical community, people interact with each other. This is the world of the internet. What that means is totally different.
Yeah.
You can have a community of things that never see someone. And that's, in that way, is a very possibility how to utilize technology in the model that creates a broader way of interacting. So I think there's a lot of kind of broader issues that need to be thought about as we're creating this.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
we have 3 of you left, and I have an update I want to make sure to let you all know about too. Jen, did you want to say your vision of the summit?
Yes. So for me, just thanks to everyone from what you said. It's all really, really useful and interesting, wonderful. So I think a chance to network and support each other is really, really important, because sometimes it can feel like a lonely journey when there aren't many of you that even know what it is. Yeah. But we're getting there, we're growing here, which is brilliant. But also an opportunity perhaps for a part of this summit, perhaps a small part that could be a showcase or whatever, or an explanation, an encouragement for some people to join. But I think that would be a smaller part and towards the end, is my view, because if we can gather momentum and support for each other, we'll feel stronger and more confident when we're inviting other people. I don't mean we paper over the cracks and pretend there are no problems, but we can be more confident about speaking and answering questions that people may have. And another thought I had, and it might not work, that part of it, or if we had some kind of film editor or someone that can do techie stuff, that we could produce something from it that could then be put on people's websites, so that people that are interested, that either didn't know about it before or can't be there for whatever reason, then that could be a way of sharing some things that we think we're ready for other people to see and hear, that could be a way of for next year. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah,
Yes.
just those ideas. Enough.
Thank you.
I've said enough. Right.
And Yana?
I think I probably already spoke. Essentially, I don't know. I was feeling like maybe the group, we could put out the educational piece, because you were talking about those who don't know anything about it. So we could leap to when the symposiums or conference or workshop begins, that people have gotten the background and they could jump in and be kind of on the same page with people who are ready to start figuring out how to make a soteria or respite house in their community. Because I personally, my vision is, as at the tail end, I want to see them start happening now. I'm getting old and I've lived many years waiting for more soterias, and I want to see it happen. So I'm happy to help write a paper, get people up to speed as quickly as possible, so that, and then find out who's interested. I mean, who is the audience? Is it just us speaking to the choir? Then we know what we need to do. We need to help each other get going. But if there's truly this huge group out there, maybe there could be some kind of a way they could tell us in a quick survey, checking off some things on what they want, so we can really get focused on meeting actual needs rather than continuing to talk amongst ourselves. That's all I'll say.
And Avrami, you get to take us out.
I also agree with what everybody said. I make a list and I need to see what you didn't say. I think something is like a little step for a person, a big step for the world. So sometimes little steps are very significant, very important. We don't need to talk only about the whole model of soteria. We can talk also about how everybody can take one thing of soteria, because change started with a little steps. You don't need, it's not everything or nothing. And I think this can be a conversation. What steps? What's a basic? What's more important? What less important? And to make a discussion about that. This one thing. Another thing that maybe can be important, practica of
technicalities
that people do in the old houses, how they manage. Maybe somebody thought about new techniques about how to do things. I think it can be important because people also want to know how you do it practica, how you do it in the field, in situations. And tied to that, stories. I think stories is very important. Also good stories that have a good end, and also bad stories that we didn't help, and why we didn't, what was wrong in the story. And another two things, like what so voice said and other people here said about another's alternatives, because there are more alternatives today than not only soteria and peer. Also you have open dialogue and how it's going together with soteria, like in Vermont. And also we have in Israel online hospitalization, like what voice said, the people are staying at their home and they get all what they need in the acute situation in an online. So also the thing about the more alternatives that you have and how you can mix models together to have a better model. with all the models. And another thing also, then I'll finish, two things, sorry. One thing is the community, how you build a community, not how you bring Soteria to the community, how you build a community, a network that that together with people that have a self-experience and also people that don't have self-experience. It's not us and them, and how you build one community for everybody, and don't do the dichotomic of people that had experience and people that didn't have experience. And last time, then I'll finish. What we want to do with the people? A person is coming to us. How we want to help him? That we want that he will be more functioning, or maybe we want that he won't be a psychotic person, or maybe we have other things that we think the person needs or not needs. I think it's very important to do a discussion about what we want for those persons.
What's the goal?
Yeah, the goal. That's the word. Yeah, the goal. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so it's perfect. It's 11:30. I want to leave you with this one very exciting piece. Some of you know, some of you may not. I talked with Robert Whitaker of Mad in America, and he is throwing their support behind the summit 100%. And some things that's going to include is that they're going to host the conference, and they have the whole big webinar package, whatever, and they have a lot of technical skills and somebody who just does that. So we have
Great.
I'm sorry?
Great.
Yeah, we have the technical piece, we have the online support. They'll also help us with registration, like they do it through Eventbrite, and we could like figure out who's coming from where, and we can, some of the things we'll have to figure out is like charging and that kind of thing, how to do that, how much do we want to do we want to do all of those questions for the future meetings. We have 2 more meetings planned in this month, next week, next week, the 16th, and then on the 30th. And some of you will be able to be at one of them. Some of you will be able to be at the others. Some may be both. Some may be neither. But you're here today, yay. The 23rd, Susan and some former colleagues are going to be presenting pretty much the same time slot at about Soteria, Alaska, stories from Soteria, Alaska. Again, we'll record that, but please come live. It's exciting. You'll ask your questions. So basically every week this month, we have a Soteria Peer Respite related thing. We don't want to burn anybody out. You don't have to come to all of them, but we'll keep meeting, and people will roll in and people will roll out, and we'll figure it out, and we'll have a big shindig in August. So thank you all so very much. Woo! Can I have a common woo together? Woo!
Woohoo, we did it.
Woo!
Go Soteria.
Go Soteria, go Pure Respite. Woo! Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
guys.
Just
Reply
lovely
to
to
all of
see
us
everyone.
on the
Thank you.
email. You can keep up the conversations on that Peer Respite Soteria group email. So keep doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And
Bye-bye.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy
Bert,
Mother's
are you
Day.
there, Bert?
Take
You
care.
Happy
contacted
Mother's
me a
Day.
long time ago in the UK, Bert. Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
Many
I
years
do
ago,
remember.
we were going to meet,
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
we? Yeah. Well, I'm
We'll-
still
we'll-
here.
we'll
and
meet
you're
someday.
still here, so that's great.
It's nice to meet you virtually. I'm sure maybe one day we can meet in person.
Definitely. We'll get there.
All right, I'm
Thank
ending
you.
it, y'all.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.